Speak Up Stories exists to empower others to present powerfully in their personal and professional lives. We provide a performance platform to achieve message clarity and speaking confidence. Through preparation, teamwork, unconventional activities, and laughter-filled speaking experiences. Join us for our showcase of stories, speeches, and performances, and find out how you can share your mind and heart and speak up your story. Speak Up Stories exists to empower others to present powerfully in their personal and professional lives. We provide a performance platform to achieve message clarity and speaking confidence. Through preparation, teamwork, unconventional activities, and laughter-filled speaking experiences. Join us for our showcase of stories, speeches, and performances, and find out how you can share your mind and heart and speak up your story. Speak Up Stories exists to empower others to present powerfully in their personal and professional lives. We provide a performance platform to achieve message clarity and speaking confidence. Through preparation, teamwork, unconventional activities, and laughter-filled speaking experiences. Join us for our showcase of stories, speeches, and performances, and find out how you can share your mind and heart and speak up your story. Speak Up Stories exists to empower others to present powerfully in their personal and professional lives. We provide a performance platform to achieve message clarity and speaking confidence. Through preparation, teamwork, unconventional activities, and laughter-filled speaking experiences. Join us for our showcase of stories, speeches, and performances, and find out how you can share your mind and heart and speak up your story.
I also get if you guys are prepping and don't move over there, I get it. See that top corner for like 10 seconds, and if it flips over after that, I'm good to go. Just makes me feel better. So it's okay if I look all the way over? My son is in 3rd grade, and it's my favorite age so far. I have a 1st grader, and I have a 3rd grader, and the 3rd grader, by far, is more fun. Now, I kid, because they're probably watching, so you're both very fun, but my 3rd grader is beginning to ask more complex questions, be curious about the world, and make inferences and connections. I recently asked him if he knew what an ecosystem was, and he did one of the, yeah. And I said, well, tell me, what is it? And he said, well, you know, it's plants and animals, and we all like exist together, and we're a community. He may have mentioned mice and mongoose too, which made me laugh, and it wasn't the definition that I was expecting. But I had a really proud mom moment off to the side. I was like, yes, my 9-year-old gets it. We're here to coexist and build community. Now, to me, life is about having good ripple effect. And what I mean by that is we're here to have good experiences, create deep connection, and make impact, leave the world a little better than we found it. I'm even more passionate, though, about having good ripple effect in the workplace. If you're not having a good time, creating meaningful connection, and making impact, you're missing out. We spend 90,000 hours in the workplace over the course of our careers, 2,000 of those this year alone. It is beyond important to create space and place that we can enjoy. Today, I'm here to talk to you about having good ripple effect for leaders, teams, and in organizational cultures. First, let's talk about those leaders. When my husband and I travel anywhere in the world, we look for a Michelin star restaurant or the next best thing. Whether it's a fancy, fine dining experience or a hole in the wall that you'd probably miss if you didn't know it was there, we know that there will be an experience guaranteed. Now, recently, I've been obsessed with measuring my life by Michelin stars, highly recommend. And you'll be happy to know that those restaurants are graded on 5 things. First, the quality of their products. Second, mastery of flavors and techniques. Third, the personality of the chef and the dining experience. Fourth, harmony of flavors. And fifth, consistency in between inspector visits. Now, what if we took those 5 categories and put that in the workplace? How powerful would it be? I recommend, if you're a people leader, of doing 2 things. For your next one-on-one meeting with your direct reports, change the title of the meeting to something more engaging and inspiring and worth having. If it's a one-on-one with Lisa and Sarah, the title should read, Inspired Coffee, Lisa and Sarah. If the location is usually your office and you work in an office building, change it to the picnic table out front, IBTC, I'll bring the coffee. If you're an online business, great, even better. Change that virtual background to be a coffee shop, and the location should be Lisa's online coffee shop. Create an experience worth having. Set the tone before the experience starts. It's your job as a leader. Now, having good ripple effect is not just for leaders. It's also for teams. I remember the first time a leader, in so many words, told me not to have fun at work. We were sitting at a conference room table. There were 4 or 5 of us discussing upcoming projects, laughing at all of the things that we couldn't believe just happened, and planning ahead. The meeting wasn't anything remarkable, actually very unmemorable, until the moment I walked out of the conference room and one of the senior leaders says, Lisa, do you have a minute? Because they always say it like that. And I turned and I said, oh, absolutely, I do. She said, you're doing great things in the company. You really are. But, I have a few words of advice for you. I know you want to go grow and go higher in the company. I really want you to realize that work is called work for a reason. And that your energy, though it's great and it's fun and it would probably be served outside of work, in order to get to the level that you want to reach, you should dial it back. I sat there thinking, what do you say to that? And she walked away, and I stood there embarrassed and ready to melt into the floor. Thankfully, a wise coworker down the way had seen the whole thing go down. He walked over and he goes, do you want my advice? And I was about ready to cry, and I was like, sure, I'll take it. And he said, use it. This is a what not to do moment. You're going to remember this, and I know that not long from now, you're going to be a people leader, and you're going to be able to use all of these things that she just told you to get rid of and actually promote it. 5 years later, and at 70 direct reports in my department, we sat down as a team and created a we are list of all the things that we are allowed to do, to have fun, to be energetic, to work hard, and to enjoy the experience. We gave ourselves permission to be awesome. And also, we created the team motto of play hard and work hard, because there should be just as much play as there is work. That's what's going to get us through those tough times. Now, not all moments in our department were rosy, but you can believe we were on a mission to leave the department better than we had found it, to have good experiences, connection, and impact, to have good ripple effect. Now, good ripple effect is also for organizational cultures. I remember when I first became an operational leader, I bought every book. I thought, okay, I know how to be a leader. This book will tell me. I watched all my coworkers, and I thought, I can do this. And I'm highly energetic and very positive, and that is my signature. I'm going to be freaking awesome. Well, my engagement scores were about the same. We get measured once a year. And I thought, you know what? It's my first year. Not a problem. I'm good. And then one day, I was standing in line, and one of my employees was a couple people in front of me, and I overheard her telling someone about our department, and she basically said it was nothing special. I was shocked. I was like, I'm really upset, number one. And number two, I don't think she realizes, like, this is my department. My energy and my positivity are what is the difference maker here. Well, after a lot of reflection and thought, I realized that my energy and positivity, I needed to match that with authentic action. I needed to create an experience worth having. I go back to those Michelin stars. It took me a while to realize that I wasn't actually creating a Michelin star experience for my team. So I looked at our routine. It was very boring. I don't know if I would want to eat there. I looked at the experience I was creating. I couldn't identify, are we a fancy fine dining? Are we a hole in the wall? What are we? So I started creating novel experiences for my team to learn and to interact and to relate. One example, I brought plastic bowls and cups and plates and napkins to our staff meeting. There was about 35 people in the room. And I started handing things out kind of haphazardly. And I said, go ahead and get your place setting set up. I'm going to hand out napkins and all that, so go ahead and get set up. I had printed menus for my favorite Mexican restaurant right down the street. And I said, go ahead, take a look at the menu. I'll be around here in just a minute to take your orders. And there was quite a bit of chaos and confusion, and one woman raises her hand and says, I have 2 cups, and I don't have a fork. And someone else says, I have 2 forks, but no plate. I had rigged this. And I was like, oh, does everybody, you don't have what you want or need? You don't have what you need to do the job, to eat the meal? And they were like, no, are we really doing this right now? And I'm like, okay, let's pause. It was funny because right as I said that, one woman looked and said, I don't think I'll be eating here again. It was perfect. I literally said, okay, time out. Part of what I wanted to do this morning is wake you up. Sometimes we need a gentle reminder that every single person matters, and one person can mess up a whole lot of things for the people in the room. As the waitress, I either gave you too much or too little. You were immediately looking around like, what am I supposed to do? The goal of our department is to support one another and to be an ecosystem, to coexist. We need to do a better job realizing that we can help each other. If you've got 2 cups and someone else doesn't have one, hand it over. If you've got a piece of knowledge or a skill or something that's going to come in handy, you need to be sharing it. It's our job to protect, build, and enjoy our ecosystem. Now, I tell you this not only to inspire you to have good ripple effect, because that would be, my job would be done, but I also tell you this because these small changes in my department, I saw significant change. I saw big ripples. I saw ROI on engagement and turnover and satisfaction of my customers, my team, and myself. I was Lisa style. I knew exactly what our experience was and what I was creating. Now, life is made up of short days and long years. We can all relate. And I'll tell you this, today's the day for you to start having good ripple effect. Begin creating experiences, connection, and impact. Leave the world a little better than you found it, ultimately, to have good ripple effect. Thank you.
I was little, the best holiday meals included my mom's famous cinnamon rolls. We owned this massive white bowl for the sole purpose of making way too many at a time. Most holidays, I'd come downstairs and sitting on the counter would be this white bowl with dough rising up, almost spilling over the edges. And when you saw that, you knew it was only a matter of time until you were enlisted to help roll out the dough and finish making them. A few years ago, I was finally trusted with this top secret recipe. I was going to be hosting my first holiday dinner ever, and it was for my in-laws, so of course the stakes were high. And I needed these specific cinnamon rolls to make this day perfect. The night before, I'm standing in my kitchen, ready to make the dough. And even though I had the recipe, even though I had helped make them numerous times with my mom, I ended up with my mom on the phone consulting me through the whole process. I kept telling myself that if I just did everything exactly like her, I'd have not only the cinnamon roll recipe, but people would think of my cinnamon rolls the same way they think of hers. Remarkable. Now, it wasn't just in cinnamon rolls that I wanted that. I wanted to be remarkable. I grew up believing that being good was the greatest thing you could do. And from a young age, I began to swallow the rebellious comebacks and tuck away the parts of me that didn't fit nicely into a particular image of good. This story reminds me of something that Seth Godin said, which is that it's impossible to create work that both matters and pleases everyone. In other words, you can be good or you can be remarkable, but you cannot be both. When I played it safe, when I chased approval, I got the results of someone you'd expect who was trying to be someone to everyone else except for themselves. I was good. But good is the enemy of remarkable.
Speak Up Stories exists
I want to share my
empower
experience.
others to present powerfully in their personal and professional lives. We provide a performance platform to achieve message clarity and speaking confidence. Through preparation, teamwork, unconventional activities, and laughter-filled speaking experiences. Join us.
I want to share my journey through this idea and some powerful lessons I learned along the way. Being good is good armor to protect against what happens on the outside, but it provides zero protection against what happens on the inside. If you want to be good, and specifically if you want to shine for your achievements, then there is a beautifully well-traveled path to success with boxes to check and milestones to hit and people cheering you on along the way. But the thing about this path is that while from the outside it looks strong, the picture on the inside may be the complete opposite. I would know. I spent a lifetime building up my armor. I signed up for the right classes, I had the right friends, I got good grades, I studied way more than I partied, and all of that led me to a good, very impressive sounding career in architecture that, as you could guess, I was good at. Clients loved working with me, and the company I worked for loved the work I did. But I didn't love working with me, and I didn't love the work I did. 5 years into my career, I had amassed over 27 years of this armor of being good, and while it was strong and shiny from the outside, I was being crushed under its weight. I wanted out, but I wasn't strong enough to walk away on my own. It was during this time that I was working with large retail brands, and I started to discover my real passion, which was branding. I'd take classes at night and get a project here and there, and it kept me going. But I was so used to doing the right thing that to officially switch careers would mean doing the most rebellious thing I had ever done in my life. So I stayed. I was 7 months pregnant when the world got tired of my crap and gave me a push. At 7 months pregnant, I was laid off. And for the next 15 months, I became a stay-at-home mom. As a stay-at-home mom, there are 0 awards to win, 0 promotions to chase, and 0 recognition for doing a good job. When that external recognition was silenced, I was left with the sound of my own voice. And it was telling me being good was not the greatest thing I could do. So I took off my helmet and I started my new career and started my business. Now there was just one problem. I had no idea how to run a business. So I did what I'd always done. I followed others and tried to mimic their strategies. But unlike school and the corporate world, where being good and doing what's expected and pleasing everyone gets you noticed, in the branding world, those same things make you look and sound like everyone else. 81% of consumers say that they need to trust a brand in order to buy from them, which is why remarkable brands are inevitably so loved. They know who they are and what they stand for, and they aren't afraid to stray from it. A year into business, I took a step back and really started to figure out what made me unlike anyone else. Knowing what my values were and where I was willing to put my stake in the ground and clear on what made me different. When I started showing up without all the armor, I began attracting clients that I love a lot easier. And clients love the work I did. But for the first time, I loved working with me. And I loved the work I did. What I do has more meaning. Now that I've shed the armor, I can help others do the same. I had a recent client who fell into the trap of being good, and they were about ready to give up on their business. They had worked with people before on their core brand messaging and struggled to differentiate themselves. So I took them through the process. I shipped their messaging off to them and quickly got a response back requesting to talk the next day. We got a call, and it was like talking to different people. They told me that I actually got them excited about what they were doing again, and they felt empowered to communicate the value of their unique approach to their clients. The remarkable brand is like the quirky but incredibly confident kid. It knows what it likes, what it stands for, and it isn't too shaken by critics. And when you're the quirky, remarkable kid, you can help others find that in themselves as well. Shedding that be good armor was a long time in the making. And the first time I really remember choosing good over me was after my freshman year of college, when I had been waiting for a letter in the mail, and it came, and it said I had been accepted into the architecture program. As I read it, I had 2 thoughts. 1, shouldn't I be more excited? And 2, how would someone excited react? What my parents saw next is me running across the yard, letter in hand, waving with the enthusiasm of someone who had just won on The Price is Right. I paid for that good response for years. Now I know there's a lot of good people and good businesses out there who are wildly successful. And if success is your goal, you can keep on following others' lead, being good, and you'll probably find it. But if you want to wake up knowing that the work you do is needed, if you want your business to represent your message, if you want to change people's lives, then you have to clearly know what makes you unlike anyone else. Because if you're designing your brand or your work or your life to fit someone else's vision of good, then what makes you remarkable will continue to become quieter and quieter until even you can barely hear it whisper. In a blind taste test, the rolls I made that Thanksgiving, and honestly every time since then, could have passed as my mom's. And yet, they have never changed anyone's life the way hers have changed mine. I copied what someone else did. I did exactly what someone else told me to do. I became someone I thought I needed to be, and the highest achievement I reached was good. My mom is the cinnamon roll queen, not because no one else can make a good cinnamon roll, but because when she makes them, she invites even the most amateur baker to become a part of making something great. There's no one you can be who is as remarkable as being who you're designed to be. Thank you.
You ever swam in a creek? Not a creek, a creek. That's what we at least call it growing up anyways. You see, there was this small stream on our farm growing up. And on those hot, muggy summer afternoons, my mother, brother, and I would pack up as if we were going to the pool. But we weren't. We were making the short hike to the creek. There we'd relax, we'd splash, we'd play, we'd even throw mud at each other. But there was only one rule. Don't drink the water. Now, what is a mother to do to keep her two ornery boys from doing exactly that? To point to the herd of cattle just upstream that's standing in it. Because it becomes pretty obvious whatever business they're doing up there, it's going to make its way down to you eventually. This was in corn country, the Des Moines lobe. Now, about 12,000 years ago, when humans got this wild idea to domesticate the goat, glaciers had just finished reshaping Iowa's terrain. And despite their huge landscaping capabilities, only the land of north central Iowa remains to display these transformations. This region is the Des Moines lobe, and it's great for growing corn. Now, when I say great, I mean that at this scale, no place on the planet produces more. But that comes at a cost. One of the reasons that this area can consistently produce bushels and bushels of corn is a lower water table. That's the depth at which the soil becomes saturated with water. And this depth is lower, it's artificially lower, allowing for healthier, more productive crops. It was interesting to me to discover that there is a legally organized method for overseeing this drainage process. They're called drainage districts. And over the past century, nearly 3,700 official drainage districts have been created across Iowa. These systems of ditches and tiles that carry not only excess water, but excess nutrients from crop fields to streams, they've assisted in achieving this ideal corn growing condition. Remember that creek I swam in? Well, that's Beaver Creek, a well-known tributary to the Des Moines River. And just 3 miles north from where we swam was its origin, a drainage tile. 20 some odd years later, and about 80 miles downstream, I began working for the Des Moines Waterworks. And little did I know that that downstream concept that was so clearly illustrated to me in that creek would influence me professionally and become a fundamental way of how I think. 50 days after I started with the utility, the Board of Trustees for Des Moines Waterworks, they filed a complaint, an official complaint, against 13 of those districts, identifying them as source polluters. Now, as this process carried out, I began to realize that whether it's in the world of water or the world of leadership, to think downstream needs to start right where you are. And adopting this mindset, well, it can lead to powerful transformations for leaders, for teams, even for organizations. Elon Musk said this. He said, "The first step is to establish that something is possible. Then probability will occur." Today, I'm going to show you the possibility to think downstream differently and how we all have the potential to increase probability. The first way to consider thinking downstream differently is not only thinking about the long-term consequences of your actions, but also to embrace them as well. So what comes to mind when I say consequence? A lot of the time, it's something negative. Why is that? The definition of a consequence is no more than a result or an effect of something. So why does it take us negative? Well, part of the answer is the negativity bias. In Psychology Today, they had an article on this. And this article cited studies suggesting that not all consequences are created equal. So let me explain this negativity bias briefly. When you have two consequences of equal intensity, the one of a more negative nature has a way greater impact on someone's thinking than that of a positive one. 5 times the impact. This is why we recall insults over praise, and we dwell on mistakes over successes. This sort of thinking, it's an upstream battle without a paddle. It's exhausting, with only limited progress. There is good news, though. The good news is that both you and I, we have way more control over how we see, frame, and even experience consequences than we give ourselves credit for. Think of it as we tend to see what we want to see. So look for the positives. Soon after I soon after I got my new job with Des Moines Waterworks, I found myself in a near-miss investigation. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's when the company, they put you in the middle of a dark room. Then there's only a single light bulb that just lights the immediate area around you. And then there's a voice that comes from the darkness, and they start to ask you questions. They start to poke and pry, and they start to quiz you, looking for where you made a mistake. They're trying to find blame. Not at all, not at all. That's not what happens. But it can feel like that sometimes. The actual intent of these meetings is to learn from an incident or an accident that didn't even happen, but it almost did. It's supposed to be a learning experience for everybody involved. But you might be able to see how one may frame that negatively. Soon after I experienced that meeting, I volunteered to be a part of our Central Safety Committee. And in December of that same year, I volunteered to give my first presentation, which was a rather uncomfortable experience, if I may add. The morning I was scheduled to present, I showed up a bit early, 2 hours early, didn't even get paid. Went over my notes, and then I went for a walk. Now remember, this was in December. Who goes for a walk at 6 a.m. when it's freezing outside? I wasn't even walking my dog. The truth is, I needed to walk off my nerves. Now, I presented on safety culture, which went just fine, by the way, but that talk helped project me to where I am today. You see, ultimately, I didn't know what was in store for me when I started with the utility, but I did know there was possibility. I just needed to act and embrace the consequences. Now, when you put yourself out there as a leader, some may actually start to see you as one. It's funny how that works. You're subjecting people to the very downstream thinking that you have. And the more you practice this mindset, the more you will see it manifesting throughout your team. We've all had those days where you felt like you actually accomplished something. You felt like you actually had some purpose. Some of you are like, Dylan, do you know where I work? Do you know what I do? That doesn't happen. Well, I'm willing to bet if you think hard enough, you can find one of those feelings, one of those days that that's happened. Now that feeling, it comes from a sense of unity or team. Understanding that your contributions are part of something greater. Well, what if I told you you can feel this every day? Every day? Come on, let's be real. Well, here's a real story. When I first got promoted into the safety position, I would consistently bombard my boss with new problems, wild ideas. I would show up and throw up just all this information at once. Now, maybe it was a period of venting, but the more I did this, the more I realized that he couldn't solve our problems. We had to solve them. We both wanted progress, but not one person can deliver that. So we must lean on each other, or we will never see our full potential. One day after another one of these venting sessions, he said, Dylan, if there's one thing I can leave you with, it's this. I said, Chuck, what are you pointing at? It's like the pictures, Dylan, the pictures. See, on his wall, there were 5 frames with a picture of an eagle in each of them. Now, this was an old concept, an old analogy to him, but it was a new one to me, so I heard him out. The idea behind it is that an eagle is a strong individual performer, always bringing their special talents, their skills, their knowledge, their wisdom, but above all else, they bring their commitment. In other words, I simply always thought that a position of authority can simply point their finger, maybe send an email, maybe make a phone call, and the problems would just go away. But to be part of a great team and to think downstream differently is to understand that strong individuals, they come together at a confluence and they form a different, bigger stream with much greater flow. And that's a real team on purpose. The last element of thinking downstream differently that I'll mention is to understand what you do today. It doesn't die today, it flows into tomorrow. And it's going to affect somebody. It's going to impact somebody somehow, somewhere. Now, we need to trust this downstream mindset. And I get it. It can be really difficult to bring your best, to send your best downstream every single day, especially if you can't see your immediate impact, or you don't even know what team you're on, or maybe if your boss is the herd of cattle upstream and you're always having to swim in all the bull. Don't drink that water. But I will have you consider this. Are you purposeful in what you are sending downstream? Are you acutely aware of its impact on others? What it costs others? If I were to ask you, what's the vision? Would you know it? And if you do, would you ever say that it's impossible for us to get there? Now, getting there, it might be a cold, wet, and dark journey, but I believe that it's worth it. After a year into my safety role, I met one-on-one with supervisors and senior leadership. I did this for 2 big reasons. The first is to understand that to build a relationship, you got to start somewhere. It's got to start right where you are. The second was to understand. Understand where they were coming from, understand where they are, and that allowed me to understand where we can go. And I can see that possibility. I want you to think about this for a minute. To be a leader is to give people a sense of purpose. Make them feel like they're a sense of being just deep into the heart of things, allowing us to identify with our peers on purpose. So think about it this way here. We're not in the water business. Yes, we sell millions of gallons of water every single day, and we play a role in that. But also, communities across the metro, they trust that safe, affordable, and abundant drinking water is going to be available to them on demand. We're also in the trust business. So why don't we trust that downstream mindset? Let's look upstream, in the past. If you're like me, I would have never thought it was possible to be a part of a leading utility in the nation. But it was. I'm here. You're here. We're both here. We're at a significant confluence in the community. It's possible. So now, probability will occur. Thank you.
In July 2015, my husband Nick gave me an ultimatum. He said, things need to change or I'm done. He indicated the D word without actually saying the D word. Now, earlier that same year, we had gone through an awful lot of change in a very short period of time, but I still could not understand. How did we get to this point? It was a wake-up call. I decided right then and there on that warm, teary night sitting in the middle of the driveway that I would do whatever it took to save the marriage. I knew deep down that meant having regular conversations, the brutally honest kind. We had considered the alternative, just telling the other person what they wanted to hear, which is what so many couples do, unfortunately. But in the end, both Nick and I agreed we would do whatever it took. So we had helpful, hurtful, and healing conversations for the rest of that summer. And by that fall, we had turned a corner. We have been doing remarkably well ever since, and last year celebrated our 30th anniversary. I am a leader with many hats. Co-founder of a nonprofit along with Nick. It's called Justice League of Food. The brand manager of our 3 restaurants and mother to 3 teenage boys. However, I would say some of my greatest lessons come from being a landscape architect. In my work, I create spaces for connection. I call these spaces conversation gardens. Now, a conversation garden is not just a beautiful place to spend time, and they are beautiful. It's intentionally designed for connection, for a space to be inviting and comfortable. Susan Scott said it this way. She said, while no single conversation can change the trajectory of a company, a career, a relationship, or a life, any single conversation can. So today, I want to walk you through a conversation garden. I want to show you that a conversation garden, like a conversation, doesn't have to be complicated. A conversation garden, like a conversation, can be comfortable. It can be a comfortable space where we connect. A conversation garden, like a conversation, can be a safe space where relationships grow and even marriages can be saved. The first stop on our conversation garden tour is to admire its simplicity. This mother-in-law tongue plant represents simplicity. It's smooth, straight, tall, very easy to grow even in the poorest conditions. It's what a landscape architect like me would call a reliable grower. We can rely on conversations too. Do you remember, what we tend to do is this. We tend to shy away from conversations. Why do we do that? Is it because we're afraid? Afraid to have that conversation? Is it because we don't have the skills or the courage to have that conversation? One of those key skills is empathy. According to Sherry Turkle, the development of empathy requires face-to-face conversations. It requires eye contact and listening. It requires the kinds of conversations that parents and children have at the dinner table. When we simply take the time to talk it out, relationships grow. But to grow in a relationship, we also need to find comfort. That's the next stop on our conversation garden tour. This slice of a birch branch represents comfort. It reminds me of a beautiful round wooden table or a comfortable wooden rocking chair. Did you know that wood actually makes us feel more comfortable, less stress, and more calm? You'll often find wood in a conversation garden. When we place ourselves in comfortable spaces, we do feel more conversational, and the relationship grows. Conversation gardens are designed for both emotional and physical comfort. Do you remember the last time you had an amazing conversation? My guess is you felt understood. The other person listened to you and really heard you. That conversation with Nick 6 years ago was amazing. Painful, yes, very painful, but still amazing. Because of the way it helped us to build, or shall I say rebuild, our foundation. Now I have comfort and confidence in our relationship. We can weather those storms. You know, like the weather in Iowa, life is unpredictable, and we need to be ready for those storms. And having regular face-to-face conversations is how we accomplish that. This philodendron vining plant represents safety. That's the next stop on our conversation garden tour. So a vine will seek the perfect conditions to grow, where it feels safe and where it will thrive. We tend to lean into something that we think will provide us safety, and that is technology. Humans have a short attention span, and technology has made that worse. Did you know that our attention span used to be 12 seconds, so that was back in 2000, and now it has fallen to 8 seconds. Even goldfish have a better attention span than humans at 9 seconds. When we are so easily distracted, and especially around when it comes to having those conversations, and we allow those disruptions, the conversation doesn't ever have a chance to reach deeper topics. We don't feel safe enough to go there, to express our emotions, our deepest thoughts, our actions, our dreams for the future. Even the mere presence of a phone can affect the safety that we feel and the desire to go to those deeper topics. Did you know that it takes an entire 7 minutes of uninterrupted conversation to feel safe enough to go to those deeper topics? When somebody doesn't have all of the information around a topic, they fill in those voids, creating their own stories, creating misunderstandings. The key is to have enough curiosity for the truth and the courage to ask the next question to get to the truth. This little garden I showed you only has 3 parts, and there are only 3 steps to create a simple, comfortable, and safe conversation garden. Step 1, commit. Commit to conversations, make them a habit, especially with yourself. When we have a better relationship with ourselves, we are better able to connect with others. Step 2, create a conversation garden. When we place ourselves in spaces that are comfortable and safe, we will be more conversational and the relationship will grow. Step 3, use it. Use the conversation garden. If you don't, it becomes just an amenity. I want to end with a challenge. Think of 3 people right now, 3 people that you would like to have a stronger relationship with. Where will you have that conversation? What do you want the outcome to be? How will you feel afterward knowing that you simply took the time to talk to that person, invest in the relationship? When I was young, visible conflict between my mom and dad was rare. I'm sure it was there. I mean, with 10 kids and very little money, yes, I said 10, I'm sure that it was there. It had to be. But what I do remember is the way that they strolled hand in hand almost every summer evening around our 1-acre garden. When you have 10 mouths to feed, a garden that size is essential. And I'm sure that those outdoor conversations were essential to their relationship and their insanity. So now, Nick and I use those same simple, comfortable, safe conversations to build our relationship, and to grow our businesses and to help others do the same and live their best lives. Being very intentional with our conversations and where we have them will lead to stronger relationships with a spouse, a child, a business partner, a partner, perhaps an estranged relative. With stronger relationships in place, you can joyfully and confidently weather life's storms, grow your business, start a new venture, whatever. The possibilities, like the conversations, are endless. Thank you.
So it's report card day at your house. Your kid gets home, they set down all their stuff, and they hand it to you. Now you go to open it, but you're a little bit nervous about what might be inside. You do open it, and you read, they turned in all their assignments on time, and they got along with the other classmates. That's interesting. Something's missing. We'll come back to that. So I love basketball. I'm a big basketball fan. And in my spare time, I'm the assistant to a head coach of a basketball team. Kind of like Dwight Schrute on The Office, for fans of that show. We prepare all year so that we can play at the end of the season in the tournament games. It's single elimination, winner go home. So we're getting ready for the game, and the referees come up to our staff. Usually we say a little something before the game. And they say to us, hey, instead of doing the normal scoring today, what we're going to do is we're going to judge the winner based on who has the most rebounds during the game. That's not how you win a basketball game. Kind of weird. We'll come back to that. So you're at your office. It's a regular Thursday. And you're in a sprint review meeting with your Scrum team. Now, a Scrum team is a fancy name for a team that builds software. So your Scrum Master, the fearless leader of the team, is going to report on all of the metrics, all of the things that the team has been up to. And they start in saying, we completed 25 story points this past sprint. That's 5 more than we had committed. Awesome. We had 1 critical defect in production. And the team's working really well together as they jumped right in and took care of the issue. We think that we're going to continue this great process over the next sprint. The team looks around, everybody in the room gives them accolades. Great job, they say. It's kind of weird though. Something's missing. But what is it? Let's rewind back to the report card, right? Your kid gave you that report card, and it just said that they turned in all their assignments on time and that they got along with their classmates. So what's missing? It's grades, right? You want to know, how is your student doing in school? And so we want to know what grades they have, because that's how we know that the teacher thinks that they are learning, right? Very important. What about the basketball game? So the refs came up to us right before we got started and said, we're actually going to go with rebounds today, not with points. Well, we would practice completely differently and get ready for the game in a completely different way throughout the season if we knew that we were going to be judged on rebounds alone. Rebounds are important for sure, but we want to score more points so that we can win the game. So let's go back to that scrum meeting. What was the problem there? We just got done. The scrum master, the fearless leader, told us about all of the outputs of the sprint, right? We completed this many story points. We completed that many defects. Well, what's the problem with that? The question that I have to ask today is, for IT teams or technical professionals, do we know what game we're playing? Do we know why we're creating these great solutions in the first place? In my experience, we focus often way too much on proving that we are creating something, right? That we are releasing any features, that we're completing endless amount of story points. The game that we are playing is not that game. The game in technical careers is value creation. But what is value creation? What is it that we're talking about when we say that? Well, Melissa Perry, in her book, she talks about what value creation actually is, which is fuel for your business. That can be money, that can be data, that can be knowledge capital, it can be promotion. But every feature that we build and every initiative that we take as a company should go to one of those metrics. We can't continue to be content with only building something. It's not good enough. We must prove that we are doing the right things. So, with that in mind, let's go back to that meeting. And now we're going to have our new fearless leader, the product manager, take us through the progress that the team has completed over the last couple of months. So, in the last 2 months, we've seen a 30% increase in our customer acquisition because of our streamlined customer onboarding, and we've seen a 10% increase in both of our customer activations and in our digital revenues. Those are directly related to our digital content creation module that we released. We're about halfway to our goal of the customer acquisitions, but we're lagging behind the activations and the digital revenues. So why is that the case? Well, we've noticed that people set up a profile, but they don't use our digital tools, and they don't become revenue generating when they don't use the tools. We're going to dive deep into that, experiment, and figure out the problem there, and come up with solutions for that over the next couple of months. So do you see the difference when we compare the output-based metrics, like story points, with the outcome-based metrics, like digital revenues? There's obviously a massive difference. And that difference really can be seen in that outcomes are more powerful. And to be honest, they're much more understandable. If you had a brand new business sponsor that walked into your technical meeting, would they know what you're talking about when you're talking about story points? Maybe, but if they haven't been around your team, they probably don't know what you're saying. They're gonna walk out of that meeting and they're gonna say, I don't think we're speaking the same language. That's a massive, massive problem. So, why do we send our kids to school? To learn. Now, will a kid that turns in all of their homework on time and that does all of their, or gets along with all of their students, the other students really well, Will they have a leg up and maybe do well in school? Sure. But show me their grades, and I'll tell you how the teacher's perspective on their learning is going. Why do we play basketball? Because we want to win the game. Will a team that has more rebounds at the end of the game be a very tough team to beat? Sure. But show me the score at the end of the game, and I'll tell you who won. Why do we create digital products? To create value. Will a team that is using output metrics be creating that value? Sure, it's possible to create value using story points. But at the end of the day, if we're using output-based metrics that tie directly back to why we're creating those digital products in the first place, then you'll have no confusion about whether your teams are creating value or not. Thank you.
going to break down on the highway, you might as well do it while riding in a giant hot dog. In 2004, I had just wrapped up shooting TV commercials in Hollywood for the Win the Wienermobile for a Day campaign that I had developed. We had people that wanted to get married in it, have a great backyard barbecue, or drive their kids to college. The hot doggers, the people who drive the Wienermobile for a living, were taking me to the airport when it broke down. We were able to coast down an off-ramp before coming to a stop at a gas station. Within minutes, a remarkable number of people stopped by to see if we had any hot dogs that they could eat. At the time, I was working as a brand manager for Oscar Mayer, and I was having a lot of fun on the job. I helped develop a corn dog from concept to getting it on grocery store shelves across the nation. I helped forecast the number of hot dogs we expected to sell across the United States on a weekly basis, and it's a big number. I helped come up with wording you see on the packaging, and I helped come up with promotions like Win the Wienermobile for a Day. I even got to talk about a couple of those on national TV. But it was at this time when I started to critically evaluate the products that I was marketing to kids and to their families. I began questioning ingredients in products like mechanically separated turkey, pasteurized processed cheese product, cellulose powder, smoke flavor, and cultured dextrose. All of these products can be found in different kinds of hot dogs. I'd spend time in the legal office at work, trying to come up with what we could say on the package to make the product seem healthier without crossing a line. Eventually, I stopped buying the products for myself and my growing family, and I resigned from my job. I did a 180, and I started working to support local foods and sustainable agriculture. At the time, I was having my second, third, and fourth children, and I was learning how to feed them food to nourish both their minds and their bodies. Journalist Michael Pollan is quoted saying, "You can eat whatever you want as long as you cook it yourself." I like it, but I like to take it one step further and say, you can eat whatever you want as long as you cook it from scratch. I think it's widely agreed upon that kids eat way too much processed food. That's why my business, Real Food for Kids, is dedicated to teaching kids of all ages about food and how to prepare it. I've witnessed a group of first graders eat pounds of kale and Brussels sprouts and tons of other raw vegetables. I've convinced a lively carrot hater to put carrots in her carrot cake, and she liked it. And I've taught a teenage boy how to make lasagna from scratch, including homemade sauce and ricotta cheese made from whole milk, and he's gone home to recreate the meal with his grandma for dinner. All of these scenarios are true. Kids will absolutely eat real food, and they're more than capable of preparing it themselves. I know, feeding kids can be a daunting task, especially when the foods that are most readily available to kids are not very healthy. I know it's convenient, it's easy, but these foods aren't convenient, aren't the healthiest, and they're the most advertised. Food used to be simple, but the processed packaged food industry has made it so much more complex. Take cheese, for example. All you really need to make cheese is milk plus one, maybe two more ingredients. Now, let's take a look at this package of Velveeta slices. It's referred to as a pasteurized recipe cheese product because it doesn't meet the legal definition to be called cheese. These are made with a whopping 19 ingredients versus the 1 or 2 ingredients that you need to make cheese. Now, does anyone take the time when you're rushing through the grocery store to take a look at the ingredient label on the back? Or we have a package of Tyson's all-natural chicken breast. Well, the word all-natural is essentially meaningless if you look at the fine print associated with the asterisk. Cage-free on this package of Eggland's Best Eggs only tells you that the chickens don't live in a cage, but it tells you absolutely nothing about how much space they actually get. Organic Pop-Tarts. They might seem healthy based on the beautiful berries on the packaging, but the organic version actually has more sugar than the regular variety. And here's a favorite of many people, veggie straws. I hate to break it to you, but they're not made with real veggies. Instead, they're made from potato starch and colored with powdered spinach and tomato paste. And one more, finally, Pringles. So these are actually crisps, not chips, because they're not actually made with real sliced potatoes. They're made with a potato powder that's turned into a slurry. I could keep going, but my family would tell me to stop. Food labels are sneaky. Sometimes there are different names for the same ingredient. Take sugar, for example. If sugar is listed as the first ingredient, you know what you're in for. But it often appears in one or more of 56 different forms, like agave or fructose or brown rice syrup, making it hard to determine what you're eating, and the total sugar content is often way more than you bargained for. That's why American kids eat an average of 18 teaspoons, that's right, 18 teaspoons a day of sugar, more than 3 times the amount recommended by pediatricians. American culture is geared towards eating convenient processed food, and most kids aren't taught about food and how to prepare it either at home or in schools. Add to that the assumption that kids will only eat kid food, and the fact that processed food companies are spending $50 billion a year in marketing to compete for your purchase. It is an uphill battle. It's messy and it's inconvenient. It's a lot of work, especially in the beginning. But it's not impossible, and the benefits are so much more than just a delicious meal and a healthy lifestyle. I think cooking is a life skill that can help kids to be happy, healthy, confident, and capable. Kids who know about food and how to prepare it will grow up to eat healthier as adults. Kids become more aware as they're exposed to new foods and different ingredients. They develop more confidence as they learn to mix and measure, use a knife safely, and operate kitchen appliances. They need to know that it's okay to make a mess, to get frustrated, and to be apprehensive about trying new things. It's fun to watch them accept positive peer pressure to try something new and then revel in the surprise that they actually like it. Cooking leads to community when we share a meal together, and it's a great way to share our love for one another. Showing love through cooking was one of the main reasons why I began doing what I do. I told you that my journey started when I started seeing the negative impact of the processed food industry. Around this time, my first child was born, followed soon after by the birth of my twins. Soon, I was trying to feed 3 kids under the age of 3. I had found my work into supporting local foods and sustainable agriculture through work with the Buy Fresh, Buy Local campaign and the Leopold Center for Sustainable Agriculture. It was work that I was passionate about, and it shaped the way I fed my growing family. Then, a couple of years later, when my 4th child was born, feeding my kids took on an even greater level of importance. My youngest daughter, Claire, was born with a number of significant cardiac and abdominal abnormalities that made it literally impossible for her to eat on her own. She needed 7 surgeries in the first 2.5 years, 2 open heart surgeries, and 5 abdominal surgeries. After that, she was physically capable of eating, but she had so many negative associations with doing that, she had completely forgotten how. She would rely on a feeding tube for all of her nutrition until she was almost 4.5 years old. After I became increasingly frustrated with the way she responded to the canned formulas that they were giving her, I made the decision to make all of her tube feeds from scratch on my own. So learning what nutrients she needed through a variety of foods was challenging, and it was eye-opening. I bought a Vitamix and I started mixing quinoa and kale and all sorts of different concoctions. But her health changed dramatically for the better once I made the switch to real food, telling me the value of feeding kids a minimal amount of processed food. I was so committed, in fact, that the week she went to kindergarten, I went down to City Hall and filed an LLC to start my business, Real Food for Kids. I want everyone to know and experience the benefits of healthy eating. I challenge you to try and incorporate one new recipe or fruit and vegetable each week. Do it in lieu of eating something processed. Look up a recipe online or go to the library and check out a cookbook. Then go to the grocery store with your kids and buy all the ingredients, go home and make it together. Share it with friends. Recognize that there's no perfect way to do this, and it might be messy, quite literally, as your kids try and create something in your kitchen. And if this is just not your jam, send your kids my way. I might not be able to give them rides in the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, but I can offer them a space that encourages them to explore, to eat, and to enjoy, while learning lifelong habits to be happy, healthy, confident, and capable human beings. Thank you.
The heart and humor you just saw did not come without significant effort. I want to thank and acknowledge all of our speakers today for their tireless commitment and dedication to themselves, and I want to thank you for joining us on our journey. And I want to end by addressing what I would consistently say to those parents who didn't think that they had it in them to perform publicly or were hesitant to incorporate speaking support and storytelling into their professional lives. I would say to them, as I say to you, absolutely you can do what they do. And not only can you do what they do, but your families, businesses, and communities need you to invest in your communication skills, speak up confidently, and consistently share your personal and professional stories. The next session of the Mastermind starts soon, which means that our next storytelling and speaking showcase is only 2 months away. Join us to ignite your confidence, establish connections, and build a lifelong habit of effectively and powerfully speaking up. Find out more at speakupstories.com.